Are you going to be speaking at the start?
Yeah. And then I'm asking that after she speaks, I speak, so. Cheers. Now you, I have it written down here from what you said. You're from, something recently. Okay. 66 years. I know. 66 years.
When does that?
I just told her I didn't remember. Late 66 years.
It's wonderful.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you. You can hear me? Thank you for coming to the 2022 Candidates Night in Groveland. I thank you very much for coming tonight. I would also like to thank, I'm Valerie Osborne, by the way. I'm from the League of Women Voters in Greater Haverhill. And this is Ruth Race, my co-host, who is from the Topsfield Boxford Middleton League of Women Voters, and she's proud to have been a member of the League for 66 years. I can't say I have been that long. Anyway, so the lady in the corner here is very important. This is Stephanie Trainer from the League of Women Voters of Andover. She's been our moderator for the last several years, and she's survived very well, I think. Thank you. And our timers in front here from the League of Women Voters of Greater Haverhill are Kay Hurley, wave up, Kay, and Sheila Callahan. And they've been our timers for quite a few years. Thank you. I would also like to thank our two videographers at the back there, who are Max Stokes and Jason De Jesus, and they do a wonderful job, so thank you. So we will get on with the business of tonight. I would like to introduce Ruth. I'll get there eventually. I would like to introduce Ruth, who will tell you a little bit how this is going to run. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you. I think I probably need that. Yeah. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight. Oh, all right. Can you hear me now? All right. That's better, I guess. Thanks, Valerie. In going over my notes, I realized that I have been working with this league on Candidates Night for 14 years, so that's a real pleasure indeed, and I do welcome you all. We weren't able to be here the last several years because of the pandemic. Let's hope that doesn't happen again. It's good to be having you all here. I want to now introduce Stephanie Trainer, whom Valerie has just mentioned. She comes to us and brings all her knowledge of running meetings for us. So without further ado, we will move on to the business of the town and the schools with thanks, Valerie.
Thanks.
Valerie, Stephanie. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Greater Haverhill League for inviting me to serve as your moderator this evening, and thank you, Ruth and Valerie. The League's a nonpartisan national organization which encourages informed and active participation in government. We hope that over the course of tonight's program, you will learn more about what the candidates running for local office hope to do for Groveland. Before I go any further, can you all hear me okay? Okay. So Groveland's local elections will be held Monday, May 2nd. Voters will be choosing several candidates, many of whom are in uncontested races. The contested races are for Board of Selectmen, with 2 candidates running for 1 3-year seat, and for School Committee, with 2 candidates running for 1 3-year seat. There is also a ballot question on the ballot. You also have an annual town meeting and special town meeting coming up on Monday, May 23rd at 6 p.m. at the Bagnall School. So I'll begin by explaining the procedures for this event. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'll do that after we've invited one of the ballot question you all will be voting on Monday, May 2nd is, shall the town of Groveland be allowed to assess an additional $427,838 in real estate and property taxes for the purpose of paying the Pentucket Regional School District annual assessment for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022. And it's my understanding that the superintendent, Dr. Bartholomew, will be with us this evening to give a presentation and then to answer questions. So Dr. Bartholomew, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you very much for being here with us.
Well, good evening, everybody, and hope everybody's doing well. I appreciate the opportunity. I just wanted to start off. It's important that you know for me, I get paid by all the residents in Groveland, West Newbury, and Merrimack, those who vote yes and vote no. So I can't take a position on this for you. My job is just to be here tonight, answer questions, kind of give you an overview of what it is that put us in this position where we are now. So as you have questions, when we finish this up, go ahead and ask them, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. So on the budget, and I promised this would be 10 to 15 minutes maximum. So this is a question that's pretty common. Didn't we just pass an override for the building project? And why aren't we using the money for that project? That's a common question we get. And the answer is, there's a whole budget, and of that budget, there's the operational budget, and that's how you run the day-to-day business of school. And that includes transportation, getting the students to school, the salaries, the benefits, the curriculum. All of that is what's in the operational budget, and that happens every single year. In 2019, what we passed, all three towns passed, was the capital funding of that project. So when that project got funded, that's for the building and anything that goes inside of it. That money does not get used for position. It doesn't get used for benefits, salaries, none of that. That only gets used for the physical building, the entire site, and anything, I guess you could say, you can shake out of the building. That's what that money goes to. So those are the two different parts that create the budget. What we're looking at is not an override because of the capital funding project. That's already been done. We had our first borrow in fiscal year 21, and our second borrow was fiscal year 22. So when you see a big increase that goes from fiscal year 20 to 21 to 22, it's not because the operational budget was going way up. It's not because we were spending out of control. It's because we borrowed $90 million. The first chunk was fiscal year 21. The second chunk was fiscal year 22. So that's why you see those big increases. Sorry, here we go. So speaking of the building project, I think as taxpayers, this is super important that you hear this. Raise your hand if you're on social media. Anybody goes on? All right. I don't believe. Some people are not. All right. So if you're on social media, sometimes there are people who say, well, we're going to have to pay more for this building project. It's over budget. Now, two greatest things about this project. First thing was that it's on time. It's scheduled to open on time. And the second thing is it's within the budget. We're not going to have to come back to any of the towns to say, hey, listen, pandemic happened, costs went up, we need to get more money. Most other places are having to do that. We're not having to because when we went and purchased, it was the start of the pandemic and the prices were low. So we're able to fit everything within the budget. That same project that we approved in 2018 is worth 1.5 times. It costs 1.5 times if we tried to do that today. So we're very fortunate on the timing of when that happened, and that has nothing to do with me or anybody else. It's just luck. It's just luck. So this is another concept for taxpayers. It's really important that you understand. It's a concept called held harmless. And there's other unfulfilled promises the state has made which have put us in a really bad position fiscally. So held harmless. So held harmless, there's two parts to a school's budget. There's the Chapter 70 money. So all the towns all get an assessment. It says, and the state says, you, because of where you live, you should be paying X amount of dollars to schools. And you have to pay that. If you don't, they penalize you. In addition to that, that's the first part. The second part of that is how many students are you sending to school? And so we know there's 3 towns, and each town pays this proportion of that. But held harmless for the school district, we received the absolute minimum per pupil for our increases. $30 per student is how much we got additional for this fiscal year, because the state views us as being an affluent community who can pay more through taxes than they need to give us from the state. Now, I live in the Pentucket district, and like you, I don't believe that for a second. And like you, I sit out there and I debate and fight and argue with legislators about this. We're fortunate, like our legislators, they understand this concept. The problem is we're just outnumbered. We have 1 representative currently, 1. 2 senators currently. So when they go in, all you takes is 1 city to say, nope, we're not doing it. Give us ours. So while we're getting $30 per student, that's going to total. Oops. So we're doing. You'll see in a second. Well, we're doing. We're going to get a total that's $67,500. $67,500 is what we're going to get. Places next to us, millions. Pentucket, $67,500. That's a very significant problem. So what's causing the need for the override? Well, you just heard about held harmless, but here's the number 1 driver. Our contract with the buses came up. So you have to put contracts over, was it over 50,000? Anything over 50,000 has to go out for a bid. So anything over 50,000 has to go out for a bid. The contract absolutely will go out for a bid. So we had the yellow buses that you see going around. That goes out to bid. That's going to cost us an additional $275,569 each year. Just a quick note. We also got this contract before gas prices went and skyrocketed. Had we tried to negotiate that now, might have been a different story. And then the special education transportation, that was an increase of $82,310. That actually is reduced down. That was over $200,000, but the school committee voted to take money out of one of the accounts and cover a significant amount of that, because it was over $200,000. In addition to that, this is when I wrote about a broken promise. When we became a regional school district, regional transportation in regional districts are encouraged because they're supposed to be more affordable. Regional transportation is supposed to be funded at 100%. We're losing $144,000 this year in regional transportation. And when you add up those 3 factors, that's over $500,000, and we only got the kids to school. We haven't done anything else. That amount by itself would trigger an override. So one other interesting thing about regional transportation, in my time, and I'm just in year 4 as superintendent, those of you who know me, I've been in here all the way through Pentucket, kindergarten through high school. But in my time, it happens periodically that the House and Senate agree and end up giving us more money. And I'll talk about in a little bit, if that happens, what impact that has on the 3 towns. Oops, sorry. So the other part that's driving it, we have 6 special education teaching positions, 2 custodians, and I can talk about any one of these if you like, human resources coordinator, director, and 3 tech positions. So I know I see a special education person in this room right now. I won't point that person out, but they would be able to articulate to you. We have one school in Merrimack, the elementary system in Merrimack, they have the correct ratio right now. In Bagnell and at Page, they do not. We have 1 special education teacher trying to cover 2 grades. That is not tenable. You cannot go ahead and do that and expect you're going to provide the optimal experience for the children, because the diverse needs of the students are so incredibly great. The custodians, People have asked me this. Well, we're building a new building. Why do we need 2 new custodians? We spent $146.3 million. We need to protect our assets. Right now, if you walk into the middle school and the high school, you'll see it's not super clean. We're not scrubbing windows because in less than 3 months, that building is going to be coming down. It's going to be torn down. So there's not that reason to do it. Human resources, we employ well over 300 people. There's not another organization you could come up with that employs over 300 people and does not have a human resources manager. Like that is extremely problematic. And the technology, during the pandemic, we had an excellent opportunity, which we took advantage. We collaborated with each of the towns. We purchased over $500,000 of technology through grants. And with that technology, because the students needed it, they were one-to-one, they were at home. Now we have positions where there are schools where there's not a single technology person in that school building. All the teachers have the technology, the students do, and if something goes wrong, someone's driving from another place to try to go and fix that. That is the situation with the tech. So the state's contribution for this upcoming year. So in the bold, that's just to point out that if you just took, the state's giving us $67,500, and you take that $143,000 in regional transportation they're not giving us, so they're already giving us negative money compared to last year. Right? But even if you ignore that, the student population, 2,325, is what it was for us. The state's saying you don't have 2,325, you only have 2,250, so we're going to give you $30, which is $67,500. The increase in our budget this year, $1.4 million. So the state's contribution to our increases is less than 5%. It's 4.8%. So there's only one other way to get that money, and that's from the towns. And in our towns, my house gets taxed, your homes get taxed, and that's how it happens. The problematic thing about this is that formula that's causing just that $67,500 appears in all funding mechanisms now. Oh, this just worked and now it's not working. There we go. So obviously, this has happened over a period of time. If you went back 15 years, state's paying 65% or so of the school's budget. Now it's 34.5%. Every year it gets to be a smaller and smaller percentage. Here's 2 examples. These get spoken about quite a bit. You've read in the papers or you've seen on TV, they talk about the Student Opportunity Act. I'll tell you right now, when you're watching the news, they're not talking about Pentucket. They're talking about much bigger school districts. Student Opportunity Act, $1.5 billion that they're going to give to schools in the next 7 years. Some of those schools are going to receive millions of dollars. Pentucket is going to receive $58,000 because it follows the same formula that the state uses to fund us. We're not going to be getting what we need, not even close. And this other one, Title I grants. In 1 year, the state took away $131,000, and Title I funds our literacy programming. They took away that was an immediate phone call. When I went through the entire chart of all the school districts, I called up the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I said, this cannot be right. We had the biggest cut to our Title I funds compared to any of the other districts by far. So $131,000, that cost us a teacher, and we had to keep the curriculum. So that got put on other teachers to try to bring that into their curriculum to cover. So this I brought up earlier. It's happened in my time where the state's come back and given us additional funds for regional transportation. They come back and say, hey, we can cover that. So this question, what happens if they do? Like the budget gets passed or it doesn't. If the budget gets passed, what will you do? In that case, we go to the towns and say, okay, you don't have to pay us as much because we are getting the additional $140,000, so we don't need to take that from you. Our number is here. That's the number we're going to budget. If we get more, if we get this much more, this part goes back to the towns. We don't need the additional amount. We have our budget. We stick with our budget. So that's what that says right there. So, and then the last part, just what does a yes vote no? What does a yes vote mean, and what does a no vote mean? And again, I can't tell you which way to vote. Vote yes, vote no. I can just explain to you what happens on either one of these. So a yes vote, right now it's presumed that West Newbury, they're not doing an override. It's just going to be in their town election. So if Groveland passes the budget, then the budget will pass, because you only need 2 of the 3 towns to vote yes in order to approve the school operational budget. A no vote. So if there's a no vote, if we have a situation where West Newbury and Merrimack, they say yes, Groveland says no, at that point, Groveland's responsible for coming up with whatever that share is of the budget. And that could put the town, and I'm guessing, I'm not going to say will because I don't know the town inside, but I'm guessing that's going to put the town in a very bad position. If Merrimack and Groveland vote no. So there's 16 teaching positions that we will have to cut. Or if someone's asked me, why do they have to be teachers? They don't. They can be equivalencies, but there's not a lot of equivalencies out there. If you want to take out 4 custodians for 3 teachers, sure, you can do that, but now all of a sudden your buildings are not going to be, there's consequences to actions. So loss of 16 teachers, plus we need those special education teachers. We can't, like, students have to receive those services. So we'd be pulling up to an additional 6, probably would try not to do that, but teachers out of classrooms. And that means you're going to see class sizes. In the high school, they go up from about 3.5 to 7 in a classroom, which isn't bad. But in elementary schools, it's a different story. In the elementary school, if you have 58 students in a grade, there's 3 teachers right now. You have 20, 19, and 19. If one of those teachers goes away, you have 29 and 29. So that's what that would end up being. And obviously, you're going to lose curriculum folks and support. That last bullet, the assistant superintendent, we talk about this all the time. We have the data. When we don't have the people there that are needed to teach, we know what the end result is. Student performance decreases. It's just the way that goes. So like I said, I'm not on social media for obvious reasons, but if you do go on, you'll hear people say that they're going extravagant, they're hiding money. Hiding money for what? Like, there's no way we're hiding money. We're trying to do everything we can for our kids. We focus on the needs. We're not trying to make anything or bring in positions that are extremely unnecessary, just nice to haves. We're trying to do everything we can for the kids. And getting that support in there to help them out and help the teachers that are working with them, that's our priority. So that is the end. And I think that I probably went over. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry.
That's okay. You gave a lot of information.
Sure,
So,
way too much info, I'm sure.
we'll now take questions from the audience. So if you want to raise your hand and state your name and address, and then you can ask your question. So, yes.
John Osborne, 3 Pleasant Street, husband of one of the big wheels here. As a result of this override, I've been looking into this issue, and it seems that there's a little disagreement in regards to the management of this whole project, inasmuch as I've asked Greg Lebrecht, who's the financial whiz and your team, whether there will be any further overrides that will be matching this override or maybe be a bit more. And he assures me quite severely, yes, no, there would be no more overrides that he knows of. On the other hand, on talking to a senior member of the school committee, he assures me that yes, it's highly likely that there will be 2 more overrides. Now, the current override is going to cost each individual person, on an average, $170 per person increase on their taxes. If we have it 3 times that, that's 3 years, that'll be somewhere in the order of $550 increase in our taxes. So I just want you to clarify what the devil is going on.
Mr. Osborne, thank you very much. Actually had a similar question to this in Merrimack. I think Mr. LeBrecq and I, you called him earlier, I think, and he had mentioned a conversation, and I believe his response was that we don't plan overrides. We can't look into the future and get a crystal ball and say, yep, we know what's going to happen, because there are two parts to that formula. Like the student population, we're good. Like we know what Groveland's about, what their population is going to be. Last year, or this year's kindergarten is huge, much bigger than we've had in a kindergarten in a really long time. Next year's kindergarten, it looks like they're going to need just 3 instead of 4 teachers, which is great. But that's bigger than what we've had in the time. So that part we know. The part we don't know is the Chapter 70 formula. We don't know if what the state says, hey, this is your assessment, this is what it's going to be. So that part we can't predict. I will say that, so when you look at a potential for an override, we had in our initial school committee budget, we had much bigger numbers. And then towns understandably said, look, can you find a way to cut those back down? So we did. And I think in Groveland's, we cut it down by $250,000, about. So I would say the answer to that question is I couldn't sit here or stand here and say to you, yes, there's going to be an override next year. There's no way I could say that. There's no way. Because things like the Student Opportunity Act, if all of a sudden they change and they give us an injection of money, then there's no need to. At the same time, had that bigger number come through and was passed, yeah, of course, it's less likely you would need to have an override. If we get an injection of money from the state, there's less likely we would need an override. If things stay as they are now, if you look as they are now and the state continuously just gives us the $30, by the way, the state in the House Ways and Means, they did pass, or they debated, and they said they were looking to give us an additional $67,500. Great. One time only, though. Doesn't include next year. Just one time. So if they give us that additional money, it mitigates the need to have an override. If we keep on going down a path of the state only giving less than 5%, one of two things needs to happen. One, all of a sudden our student population is going to have to decrease, so we don't have to, like teachers who retire, we don't have to fill those positions, and that offsets it, which is what has happened the last, 10 years or so. Or, yeah, there's a potential for an override. I mean, we're just in that position now where when you go from such a high percentage that the state's covering to such a small percentage, if they keep heading in that direction, it's a problem. And it's not just a problem for Groveland, West Newbury, and Merrimack. All of the small communities around here are dealing with the same issue. The difference for us is we're a regional district. We're not a single municipality. So we don't have the luxury of saying, hey, you know what, it would have been nice to pave 7-star, but we're not going to do that this year because we need to take that and cover the loss for the school. We just don't have that. Or if there's Triton's the closest one, and Triton, you see it periodically, they have overrides, and you'll have 2 towns say yes, 1 town says no, and everyone ends up increasing their numbers. And it's also why when you look at what the per pupil expenditure has been over time relative, districts like Triton, they spend far more than we do because they've felt that pinch sooner. We've just been in a beneficial situation where we've had teachers retiring and we've not had to come for override. So my hope, we meet with legislators all the time, and not just myself, but groups of superintendents. We come together and we talk to them. We try to get them to understand our predicament with this Chapter 70 formula, and also with things like special education. Special education's gone up more than 84% in 15 years. It consists of almost 34% of our budget. That is a huge number. And some of that those are medical. A lot of those are medical situations that it's not an educational problem. It's a medical issue. But the state, back in the 80s, put that on the towns. But of course, special education wasn't that big of an issue, or it was, but it just wasn't identified as frequently. Now it is. And the costs have just escalated beyond anyone's wildest dreams, I think. So I could never and would never give you a definitive answer one way or the other. Never. I have no way.
Good answer.
No answer is not a good answer. I wish I could give you a good answer. I apologize. Yeah.
So are there any other questions before we move on to? Okay, sure.
My name's Caitlin Guilfoyle. I'm at 4 Cannon Hill Road Extension. So I have been following this over the past couple months, and I have heard that the school district had refused a good offer from the town to increase funding slowly over the next several years. Given what you've described about the current transportation and special education needs, would that have been a viable solution? Why or why not?
Okay, so the question is to slowly increase. Well, there's a thing called gradualism, right? If you gradually do that, so in this current situation, we are at a point where if this doesn't pass, it's 16. You just saw up there 6 teaching positions. So let's just leave it at those 6 teaching positions. If it was a gradual increase, one, you have to define what that gradual increase is. Is that gradual increase a quarter of what we needed? Is it half of what we needed? And are there repercussions? Yes. Because what we're looking for is not something that we just want. We're talking about things that we need in order to support the children, in order to support the people who are working with them in the classroom. So if we went a gradual route, you're also, if you went for a small amount on an override each time, that means it's a vote every single year. And what we've been experiencing, certainly on our side, this is the first time Groveland's had an override, I believe, in 15 years for an operational budget. So to put Groveland through like 3 consecutive overrides, that would be an extraordinary challenge. And if one of them does not pass, we revert back to last year's budget, and we start operating off of a 1/12 budget. And when you operate off of a 1/12 budget, we are then contractually required to notify those 16 people that their jobs may not be around. And then as a result, those 16 folks, do we all know what they're going to do? Yeah, they're going to go to other districts and they're going to take jobs somewhere else. And then eventually, once the budget does get passed, then we're going to end up posting positions, and we're going to get teachers coming to us right before the school year and the start of the school year. And I would just ask you, at the beginning of the school year or a month into the school year, tell me what you think the quality is going to be that we're going to be able to pull in for your children, for the grandchildren, nieces, nephews. What's that going to be like in September? Yep. From time to time, you get a gem. They just moved up. They're just trying to get acclimated. So gradualism, that's what that would end up getting us. It's a good question.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate. Thank you, everybody.
So,
An applause. Very much appreciated.
so now I'll explain the procedures for the event. And I think everyone has already done this, but if you could silence your cell phones. Obviously, you know we're being taped, and I've already had you raise your hand, so we'll do that. So for the candidates, for the uncontested races, if you're here, you'll be introduced. I'll say your name in the order that you appear on the ballot, and you'll have 2 minutes to make a statement about your office. And then I'll call up the candidates in the contested races. They'll have 2 minutes for an opening statement, followed by questions from the audience, and they'll have a 2-minute closing statement. So, without further ado, I'm just going to go through the ballot. Is William H. Dark here? Running for assessor. Mr. Dark? Oh, okay. David J. Greenbaum? Yes, very good. So you have 2 minutes. Thank you. Actually, you can go there, and I'm wondering whether, yes, you should probably have the microphone, so.
Good evening. So my name is David Greenbaum. I am a resident of Groveland for going on 17 years now, and I'm running for a seat on the Board of Health. A little bit about myself. Like I said, we've lived here for nearly 17 years. I'm married. We have 3 kids. 2 have gone through the district, and 1 is a freshman in high school now. A little bit about my credentials. Currently, I am the health agent for the City of Salem. I've been at the City of Salem on and off for about 15 years. I hold a number of credentials: registered sanitarian, certified health officer, ServSafe certified pool operator, and I have over 20 years experience. That's me. I feel like I'd be a good fit on the Board of Health. I have a lot of knowledge about public health. I'm more than happy to answer questions. I thank the League for the opportunity to speak. If anybody has questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next is Raymond S. Dower III, Cemetery Commission. So, no? Okay. Library trustee, we'll move on to J.A. Collins. No? All right. And Kathleen Prunier couldn't be with us this evening, so did here. So Light Commission, Stephen J. Daniels. No? Okay. Moderator, William Dark. Mr. Dark, no? Okay. Planning Board, Brad Ligels? Legals, sorry, thank you. All right. Elizabeth Cuniff, Town Clerk. Very good, hello. So you have 2 minutes, thank you.
Good evening, my name is Elizabeth Cuniff, I'm running for...
Oh, yes, you will want to use that, sure.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Cuniff, I'm running for re-election as the town clerk. It's been a wonderful experience the last 3 years as the town clerk. I've met a lot of wonderful residents. The people in the building are wonderful to work with. I would ask for your vote again for this election. A little bit about the office is when I started the position, I was in awe at the records that are in our vault. The age and the beauty is amazing, but they need a lot of help. So one of the things I would like to concentrate on is finding the best way to archive and maintain and store the beautiful records that we have here in Town Hall. Secondly, the town is looking into a new website, and I would like it to be a lot more user-friendly so that when people are looking for documents, they can actually go onto the website, they can download, fill out the documents, and come in. At this point, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. As an elected officer in the town, we were able to buy 3 new voting machines that make Election Day a lot faster and more efficient. We were also able, during COVID, to purchase what they call poll pads. So we use the poll pads during elections and also at town meeting, and it makes it faster and more efficient to check people in. And I have a wonderful group of poll workers who I couldn't do it. They're just amazing, and I thank them very much. Lastly, an area of concern, so I guess I'll take the opportunity to bring it up, is we have a number of dogs in town. A lot more people own dogs and have dogs, and people are not registering them as much as they should. We have a lot of unregistered dogs, so if people would just take the opportunity to think about the importance of registering their dogs, it's $5 for a neutered or spayed dog, and it's $10 for an unaltered dog. It's important for the police, it's safety, so please come in and register. You can go online to register. You just need your updated rabies. And the fines do start as of June 1st, which is an additional $10 on top of the fee. So please register. I thank the League of Women Voters tonight for the opportunity to speak, and I hopefully will be the town clerk after the election. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Remind people when the election is.
I did that too, but- All right, the election is Monday. We're 7 to 8 o'clock with the regular election hours. So if you have the opportunity to come throughout the day when it might be a little slower, please think about it and do that, as opposed to having everybody come in the morning and the evening. So if you have the opportunity to come throughout the day, please make that a priority, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll call up the 2 candidates running for 1 3-year seat on the Board of Selectmen, and that would be William G. O'Neill and Mark Parento. So if you could come up. And, no, that's fine, either way. And one thing that I didn't mention is the timekeepers who are there, right there, and they will be So you'll have 2 minutes for your opening statement, and then when we get to the Q&A, you'll have 2 minutes to answer each question, 2 minutes each. And if you ask a question of one candidate, the other candidate will also have an opportunity to answer. And just keep an eye on the timekeeper. They'll show you a 30-second, 15-second, and a stop card. Right? Okay. Very good. So we will start with Mr. O'Neill. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
All right, great, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on this most important event. I think it's very important for the folks out there to get to know us. My name is Bill O'Neill. Some of you know me as Selectman O'Neill, some of you know me as Bill, some of you know me as Coach Bill. Brief background, 23 years ago, my wife and I sought to find a wholesome community where we raise our family, our 2 young children. 22 years ago, we decided on Groveland would be the community that we would plant our roots in, a nice, wholesome community. For some reason, we decided to have 2 more children after that. Don't ask me why, but we'll get into that later. But I wasn't one to, and I've never been one to just hang a hammock in the backyard and plant a little rose garden and be satisfied. I've always been one that looks to get involved, to make things better. And that's what I did pretty much right away. I got involved in things that I knew very well, youth sports. I got involved in the baseball leagues, the football leagues, the basketball leagues. And in 2000, maybe around 8, we took on the project to revitalize the Washington Park. And then in 2012, at a select town meeting, I noticed there was a need for capital improvement members and FinCom members. So at the end of the meeting, I approached the Board of Selectmen, and I said, I'd like to volunteer for both. I said, we never had anybody to do both before. And I said, well, now you got one. I proudly served on that for the next 4 years. In 2016, I was elected, ran and was elected as one of your selectmen. And I've been a proud public servant and honored and humbled by your faith in me the past 6 years. But I didn't stop there. When I came here, I had the same DNA in me to make things better. Stop. Okay, I'll stop. That's good enough.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Parento.
Good evening. All right. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having me. This is all pretty new to me. I've lived in town my whole life, 35 years old, worked for the town, so hands-on with the highway department. I know a lot about the town, want to stay involved. Now that I've gotten a new job, I can. And I just feel this town has a lot of stuff that needs to be finished, projects, there's a lot of potential with all the workers we have. I know them all personally. I watched all these meetings, and there's some things I disagree on, some things I agree on, whatnot. I just feel I would be a good fit for this. Like I said, I'm new to this, so this is a little weird. It just, yeah, great, 1 minute. All right, I'm bombing this one, huh? Just, yeah, I know everybody in town and just want to make it a better place. I want to stay here. I want to make it affordable, That's really all I got.
That's fine. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll open it up to audience questions. And so raise your hand. I'll call on you. Yes, Mr. Osborne.
This is the best part.
And yes, please do say your name and address. Yes.
Thank you, sir. John Osborne, Pleasant Street. One of the concerns I have, and I wonder whether you share this, and that is the taxes. One of the problems we have in Groveland, and I think it's a national problem now, that there's not enough housing. Housing has increased in price, and unfortunately, I've talked with the assessor today, And I've worked on the numbers, and it turns out that the average house in Groveland increases in value at $25,000 a year. Now, let's assume for a minute that these overrides pass, but within those 3 years, the override is minuscule in comparison with the big problem, which is the tax rate per $1,000 hasn't changed at all. And so, as a result, because of this increase of $25,000 a year, 3 years from now, there will be an extra value to my house of $75,000. So multiply that by no change in the tax rate, and it hasn't changed in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, it ends up that the taxes are going to increase enormously. Currently, my tax rate in the last 5 years has increased by 26%. But if indeed I have an extra $75,000 and 3 overrides to deal with, it will increase by 40%. The problem is, it seems to me, the situation is out of control. Now, looking at it, when I said the 26% increase, when I said about the 26% increase, part of it is from the 1.5%. What, 2.5%? 2.5% over 5 years comes out to be compounded 11%. So here, 11% of the taxes were part of the 2.5%. But the other 15%, where'd that go? And it went to looking after the town. So there's the problem for everyone, everybody. We are becoming real estate rich and cash poor. What do you think about that, guys?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Parento, you get this one first.
All right, I agree. I mean, I've kind of run through the numbers myself, and I totally agree with that. I feel this town, we need more business to offset these taxes. And I know we don't want to ruin the small town Groveland, but I mean, we need that tax revenue. That's the only thing that's going to help us. I mean, my honest opinion, I don't think taxes will ever go down. But if we could keep them the same, that would be a good start anyways. But we need to get more business in this town. It's the only thing that's going to make a difference, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. O'Neill.
Mr. Rombo, thank you for your question. It's a very difficult situation. We all feel the impact of the higher taxes. It's been really noticeable since the decision to build a new school. You can see the property values increase almost overnight once that vote happened. This is not unusual in a lot of communities that build new facilities like high schools and middle schools. It attracts a lot of people from other communities that want to get in. And what that does is increase the home values because people begin to bid over asking, and then they get into bidding wars. And it's a very difficult thing to stop once that treadmill starts. I can certainly empathize with your situation. I know what it was like to take care of my elderly mother after my dad passed away. It puts a lot of people in very difficult positions, having to choose whether they can afford to live in the home they've lived in their whole life or whether they need to move. We do everything, and I've done everything in my power to make sure that your taxes don't increase by finding other sources of funding. For example, the summer program is a good example. When I first got here, prior select boards had really kind of dissolved it. They didn't realize how important it was, not only to the folks that needed it and required it so they could work, but it also throws off a lot of cash every year. It actually makes more money than it ever spends. And that money we turn into back into the school. The new fields behind the Bagnell were funded basically by the money that's expelled from that summer program. The air conditioners in the library. Same thing. These are things that I look for that we don't have to dip in your pocket, but we can enhance the community through sources of other ways. We look for grants. Rebecca has done a tremendous job in the past year. She's brought in almost $1 million worth of state and federal funds to help the town grow in a very responsible way where we don't have to ask the taxpayer to foot these kind of bills. Believe me, John, I feel the same pain. I'm not a fixed income, but I'm on a salary. I can work 100 hours a week. I'm not going to get a dime more. So it's difficult. We're all in the same boat, and we do look for every possible way to relieve that tax burden on our taxpayers because we know how difficult it is.
Thank you. Thank you. So are there, yes? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Gentlemen, my name is John Drinan. I live on Nichols Way. I may have missed this, so if I'm asking you to repeat yourself, I apologize. Could you give us a snapshot of your management and problem-solving experience? I think you just touched on some of it, but in other words, leading people, building coalitions, trying to look at a town-wide problem and solve it, just any experience you might have had in that area?
Thank you. And Mr. O'Neill, this goes to you first.
Yes, thank you for the question, and I'd be happy to expand on it. Again, I didn't come here to take up space or wait for a participation trophy. I look for ways to make things better. Some of the ways that I've done that in the past, again, with the summer program, working with Denise, our prior finance director, to bring a town warrant article to town meeting to create a revolving account where they didn't have that cap anymore, where they could take as many children as they want. And every child in that camp adds to the revenue that comes back to the town that we can use. With 7 simple words, one night, or 8, depending on how you want it, whether it's 1 word or 2 words, I mentioned the dog park. I took a lot of email hate for that. But in conversations with Mr. Dempsey, Selectman Naves, we found that we could use some CPA funds. And then Mr. Dempsey also went and found a Stafford grant that is going to build us a brand new dog park. I've worked early on in my tenure here. I worked with the chief of police because I was tired of burying little leaguers that I had coached dying from opioids. And I said, Chief, what can we do to resurrect the DARE program? I want drug and alcohol awareness at a young age is so vitally important so that we can stop this epidemic that's out there. He agreed. We worked together, and we have Officer Josh Sindoni, who is just an excellent officer that does that DARE program. I've worked with the capital improvement, and again with Mr. Dempsey, to revitalize Washington Park. We brought in new lights. We've revitalized the 50-70 field, and we put together a new playground down there, which is a huge, enhancement to the whole community. So I believe there's lots of opportunities. In the last 6 years of my life, I've actually worked on the middle high school building committee to make sure that that came in on time and on budget.
Thank you. Mr. Parento.
So, my hands-on with the highway department, I worked directly for the highway department for 10 years. I was the second in-charge worker with 2 guys underneath me. We did all the projects in town, and working hand-in-hand with them, me being the senior guy, I mean, telling them we're working together, getting the projects, actually physically doing them, not talking about them. I owned my own tree business for a couple of years before I worked for the town. I know how to talk to people. Not the best at this right now, but within time, hopefully. It's just, I physically get the job done. I don't talk about it. Like, you got a plan, all right, let's do it. We don't have to blow it up and make it sound great, okay? I'm a guy, works great with others. Give me your ideas, I give you mine. We get it done. That's how I operate, and
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Yes, so are there other questions? Yes. And he's bringing you a microphone.
Mike Dempsey, 33 Uptack Road. Explain what kind of plan you put in place to bring more business into Groveland.
Mr. Parento, you're first on this one.
Well, we bought strawberry fields. There was a plan a few years back to subdivide 5 lots right along the Center Street area between Billy Dunn Landscaping and St. Patrick Church, roughly. That I don't know. I think it's 150-ish Center Street. So, I mean, since we're going to be running sewer through there for the Bill Daley project off of Salem Street, I feel that it's not going to contaminate our aquifer. So we could sell off small 1-acre lots, have, under the right guidance and all the rules. I mean, you know that. So we could do it, sell it, just even if you got 5 lots for $200,000 apiece, there's $1 million right there. And as long as we do it under the right rules and keep our eyes on it, that's easy money, and there's no contamination, and to me, it's, I don't know, pretty simple. That's it.
Okay, Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Dempsey. I guess the real crux of the issue is you've got to look at it from the business owner's point of view. Okay, what's going to entice the business owner to come to Groveland? Tucked away in Strawberry Field, away from traffic, away from basically the hustle and bustle, I don't think anybody's going to be interested in putting a location there. The difficulty comes in what do we want and where do we want it located, and then finding a business that's willing to come and locate there. So it's not just a one-way proposition. We'd all love to have more business, more commercial, more industry in the town. It would lower our tax rates. But we also have to be pragmatic and realistic about it and understand that it's a two-way street, that we can advertise all we want. But if business owners don't feel like they can establish a residence, a brand, and a profit, basically, because that's what we're all in business for, then they probably will look to find other places that are more convenient. I mean, let's face it, we're a few miles from 95, we're a few miles from 495. We don't have a lot of public access, although that's going to change in July. It's a two-way street. And we'd like to bring in more business, but we also have to be understanding of what the business owner is really looking for when they want to establish a business in Groveland, and how does that help them? And basically, we're trying to do that with the economic development team we put together. It's not an easy task. It's not an easy sell. Again, real estate comes down to 3 things, right? Location, location, location. We don't have the ideal location for a Walmart or an Amazon distribution center, let's face it. And we don't want that. That would change this town and the community and the face of it forever. So we really need to be realistic in our goals, and we really need to understand what we're asking for, because you may get it, and that would be a problem.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
Hi, my name is Ruth Rivard. I live at 6 Berrywood Lane in Groveland. I chair the finance board for the town. So chairing the finance board is a volunteer position. It's a lot of work. You see the ballot tonight. There's only 2 contested races. I was thrilled to see somebody for the Board of Health who has what seems like great experience that we really need. There seems to be a disconnect from the population. I know the population of Groveland is full of smart, intelligent, creative, motivated people. They don't seem to be volunteering for our town's boards and committees. Why do you think it's a problem? How is it a problem? And what can you do to engage the community to be more involved, because that's really what we need to all work together in order to move, I think, the causes of the town forward collectively. So I would like your feedback on that. Thank you.
So, Mr. O'Neill, you're first on that one.
Oh, great. Thank you for the question, Ms. Rivard. Volunteerism is very important, especially in small towns like ours, and that's why I got involved early on in my time here. As a matter of fact, one of the first things I did when I was elected to the board was to find a way to recognize these volunteers by starting a Volunteer of the Month, so that we could recognize the special individuals in our town with certificates and appreciation for what they do. It's a difficult thing. Volunteerism isn't always easy. I see it in every organization I've ever been in. There's always a lack of people that want to get involved. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the criticism. I guess I don't mind. My thick as the skin is concrete, so I've never minded the criticism, because most of the criticism comes from people that really don't want to get involved. So you've got to take that with a grain of salt. My philosophy has always been, when I coach, when somebody criticizes, I open the gate. Happy to help. Come on board. Water's great. Dive in. You'll love it. Most of the time, people don't have the time, or they don't have the passion, or they don't have desire. It's sad because, as they say, the old adage, it takes a community, and it really does. It takes all of us, each and every one of us. When people used to say to me, "How did you do this down Washington Park?" I used to turn around and point to all the people in the stands and say, "This is what it takes. It takes every single one of you to do that. It takes every single one of us to build the school, to raise our children. It's not just me raising my children. It's the teachers in the school. It's the folks that they pass in the street." It really is a difficult situation. I wish there would be more of it. I've done everything I could. As a matter of fact, Mr. Greenbaum, I've been trying to recruit for several years, and finally he did decide to come on board, and I think he's going to make a great addition.
So, thank you. Mr. Parento.
Well, I think part of the reason getting people to get involved is just because the taxes are so high. There's parents are working, more than their 8 hours. We need to do more. I feel we need to do more with the things like Groveland Day. We need to get the actual residents in and let them see what this town has to offer, and I feel that would motivate people a lot more to get involved, because everybody's got their opinions. Some are good, some are bad, whatever. But I think if we did more stuff like that to get the people interested, then we could get them to join these boards. I mean, the whole reason I'm doing this is because I work for the town, and then now I left. Now I'm out of town, and this is my way of doing it. If I lose this, then I'll join something else. But you got to have it inside you too. Obviously Bill is very motivated, and he has been involved in a lot, and I just want to do the same thing myself. And we got to make it more interesting for the people or something. I don't have the answer. I'm not going to tell you I do. But I feel if we did more projects, like I said, the Groveland Day, Bill Dunn used to do the Pumpkin Fest out front, things like that got the families interested. And I feel if we did more stuff like that, they'd want to get involved, and you could, maneuver them in slowly and make them interested into it.
Thank you. Well, I think if there are no other questions, we'll move on to closing statements. And Mr. Parento, you're up first, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, like I said, I would like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having me. Like I just was saying, I just want to be involved in this town. It's my town. I grew up here. I don't want to leave. I want to keep it the small town that I grew up in, and just hope everybody gets out May 2nd and votes, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. O'Neill.
Hi, thank you again to the League of Women Voters and to everyone out there today that braved the cold and the wind to come out here. I've been, as I said, I've been proud and honored and humbled by your faith in me in the last 6 years. I came here with and promised you two things, and only two things, that I would work my tail off for you to make this a better place, and that I would never lie to you. I think I've done my best up to hold those two things. Speaking of Groveland Day, I'm glad you brought it up. Groveland Day at one time was dormant. It was dead. And against the better advice of my colleagues here on the board and Denise at the time, but I told them I couldn't go home that night if they didn't allow me to put together the committee, which they did, and to this day, Groveland Day is now functioning again. I came here to get things done. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to rest on my laurels. I'm going to continue to work as hard as I possibly can in every facet and every faction. I sit on the recreation board. I sit on this board. I coach a Little League. I am on the high school, middle school committee. I work full-time. I have 4 children. I have 4 grandchildren. If you want to find the time, you will find the time to get involved. Like I said, the water's great. Come on in. Dive in head first. You'll love it here. It's great. And the more you get involved, the more you'll love it. And the more you love it, the more you'll want to get involved. And it becomes addictive. It really does. I'm addicted to it. I can't stop. I'm not going to stop. And this is what you get. I'm not going to change. I'm going to keep working just as hard as my tail can work for you and for the betterment of Groveland. I appreciate your support. I wish to thank you for the last 6 years. I hope to get your vote on Monday. But if not, it's been a great ride. I feel very proud of the things I've accomplished. And I wish you all the best of health, success, and happiness. And God bless all of you. And thank you for coming.
Thank you. So we'll now call up the 2 candidates running for school committee.
Good luck.
Mr. Richard C. Hodges and Lana Marie DeRocher. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Lana. Thank you, Lana. Sorry about that. Okay.
Hi, Lana. I'm Dick. Pleasure to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
Would you like a water?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So you will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. And Mr. Hodges, you're first.
Well, my experience expands 27 years in the classroom and 13 years in administration. I taught 5 subjects in my first teaching position. That was 7th grade world geography, 8th grade American history, 7th and 8th grade physical education, 7th grade science, and 8th grade English. I did this for 11 years, and then I went to the high school and taught 9th, 10th, and 12th grade English for 16 years. I was assistant principal after that, after those 27 years. I applied for and was accepted as assistant principal for grades 5 through 8, which was actually fabulous, having 5th graders walking around the hallways with 8th graders who thought they were 25. It was wonderful. And I've ended my career after 7 years of principal with grades 6 through 8. I replaced Jack Willett. He had a 3-year term here and moved to Plymouth. And so after some arm twisting, I finally accepted, and I finished the last 2 years of his 3-year term on the school committee. And I have recently finished 3 more, which means I'm up to 5, and I'll save the rest for my closing comment.
Thank you. Ms. DeRocher.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for having this event for us tonight. I'm Lana DeRocher. I have been here in Groveland now just 4 years. Previously, before that, I was 15 in Merrimack. I have two sons. I have a Pentucket graduate coming up this just in 4 short weeks, and I also have a sophomore. I'm currently in the healthcare profession, so I came from a background in the past of insurance business out on the West Coast. I also did local real estate around here before I was a mom. I have been married just now 20 years. My husband is a business owner here in town. He runs the American Painting Company. We are the roll your sleeves up type of people. I have been very involved with my kids and their education and helping in volunteer programs since they were in elementary school, including up through middle school, helping with the PTO and various fundraising. And I'm currently involved in helping to run this year's Pentucket Senior Celebration for this year's graduating class. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now open it up to questions from the audience. And so if you have a question, if you raise your hand. Yes. And you will need to state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Elaine Muse. I live on Cannon Hill Ave in Groveland, and I'm happy to meet you. I especially am happy to meet you. I've been a teacher, and I'm very concerned for public education. I'm very supportive of it. And my question, and Dick, I know you've been on the board already, but I'm just curious to know why you want to be on the board.
Well, actually, I talked to the superintendent about that. I said, you know, I've had 5 years. Do you still want me to do that? And he said to me 2 things. He said, if you still love kids and want to make a difference, go for it. That's why I'm here. I have 4 children that have gone through the system. I now have 5 grandkids. My Suburban fits all 5 grandkids and 1 hitchhiker. I don't have a parent agenda, which is one of the things I'm comfortable about my position on the school committee. I'm here for kids, I'm here for staff. I'm not here for me. I have nothing, all of my sons, all 4 sons are adults now. They've gone through the system, they're out. So I'm here just to make a difference.
Thank you. Ms. Hodges.
All right, and
Sure, I'm
for
so
myself, I feel like I contributed a lot to our new school building committee, which was, again, as we just talked about, just, it seems like a blink of an eye ago, although we've all survived and coming on the other side of the pandemic. So I feel like I'm a fit from the parent and community member. Again, very involved and very in the thick of it. You know, a lot of my personal experience with working with school administration and teachers and other parents is better communication. And as somebody asked about community involvement, you do have to roll up your sleeves and you do have to be able to be willing to give your time. And I think we need more of that from, again, from young to old, because we all want to hang on to our homes, these booming real estate times, and, you know, schools in towns that are flourishing is a big driver for that.
Thank you. So, any other questions for our school committee candidates? Okay. Oh, my goodness, okay. Okay, sure, please do.
Same name, Elaine Muse, Cannon Hill Ave. Just to piggyback on that, because obviously if you're giving your time, I would expect that your heart is in it, because you're giving your time and your care. If you continue, Dick, and if you are newly elected, I'd just like to know what kinds of things would you like to see either stay the same or change in our Pentucket Regional School System?
And Ms. DeRocher, you go first on this one.
So I recently, you know, I will say again, I'm a young going on 52 this birthday. I can't believe I say to my kids, you know, I was around in the 1900s. So I'm looking at everyone in the room. That feels about right. You know, I think that it starts with, I saw a social media post today of a proud parent who was talking about pre-kindergarten and asking about their class of 2035. And just tonight on my way over, I looked at my husband and I said, I will be 65 in the year 2035, which seems like, again, tomorrow in some respects and 1,000 years away otherwise. So I think that the whole thing with our connecting our communities, literally starts from, I have a good friend who's running in Merrimack for this seat. Her name is Julie King. When I announced that I was going to run, all of my friends on the other side of the river were completely panic-stricken that they were going to need to decide between Julie and myself. And I said, no, remember, I moved to Groveland. So, part of that knowing parents and community members, I feel like is really a special part about joining these types of things, is you have to be able to hear what people have to say, and you have to flush out what is the truth and what is not. And as Dr. B said, I can't believe some of the information that I've seen swirling around this override about what it is, what it isn't. And you have to ask questions to get the answers, not assume that somebody's saying to you, it's going to be 750, it's going to be 150. You have to know what the numbers are and what they mean. So I think for my role with looking at this would be to help get that information out to our communities so that it's accurate and correct and people understand what it is.
Thank you. Mr. Hodges.
Well, speaking of age, when I first moved to Groveland, my neighbors were Adam and Eve, so that'll give you a clue about how old I am. One of the things I want to continue, I've chaired for a number of years our policy subcommittee. When I got on the school committee, I was handed the policies, and I found, in fact, I remember saying to our new superintendent, I don't think the last superintendent was impressed, but this one was. I said, there's no meat on the bones. In fact, in many of the cases, there's no bone on anything. We don't have policies that most of the other schools have. So for the years, we have spent days, weeks, hours, months going over. We have finally upgraded our policy just in time for a 5-year review. And why not look forward to that? That's something where you have a chance to make a difference, and the policies are very, very important. This is a tenuous time that we live in. Anyone can be sued for just about anything. You need to have your act together, and that many years ago, until we got a new superintendent, we did not have our act together, and we now do. So that's something that I look forward to. The policies, I'm sure they're going to be refreshed, and the Massachusetts School Committee Council, I'm sure they're going to send us all kinds of amendments, and so we will be busy right away with that, and I look forward to that challenge.
Thank you. Yes. And then there's a gentleman there, so we'll, good. Glad people are.
Thank you. Valerie Osborne, 3 Pleasant Street. I'm a former educator. My husband is a former educator, so we're definitely in favor of education. But the schools take over 70% of all the money in the budget in Groveland. I've worked with the elderly for about the last 40 years in one way or another, either as a profession or as a volunteer, and I'm still a volunteer as president of the Friends of the Council on Aging. How do you feel about the amount of money, the fraction of the amount of money that goes to the schools and leaves so little for the rest of the town, including the elderly? Thank you.
Mr. Hodges, you're first on this one.
Yeah, I think our tax dollars, in terms of going to the schools, is an investment. When I went to school, I had no idea that there were elders that were probably sacrificing for me. And now that my neighbors Adam and Eve have passed, I'm now the elder. I shaved this evening and I go, you're not 22 anymore at all. And maybe it's my turn, but the 70% is not unusual. It is a very, very true estimate of, in fact, we're probably on the low side. Some are even 75 and 78% that go to the schools. It's a balancing act because your question is who's important. I think everybody's important, but I see our kids as an investment. And I'm willing to deal with that 70% if we can produce some of the greatest kids on the planet right here in Groveland.
And Mr. Rocher.
All right, thank you for the question. I think, again, I so appreciate what educators and the entire administration have to go through to help educate these fine human beings that we've all created. I myself am in healthcare now, so I also see the other end of the spectrum. I see people who, I worked in assisted living, and I had to work with many families who had to make the decision that maybe home was no longer the best place for their parents and grandparents. So a lot of us now in this sandwich generation are looking at both ends. I have in-laws that I'm worried about them every day, and should they be driving, and are they actually eating? And I have 2 young boys who I'm trying to make sure understand and know how to respect their elders, because I can see all of that good in our students. So I think part of the piece about where the dollars are going, when I made the choice to come into the Pentucket School District from coming from North Andover, you know, it was, again, all about affordability at the time and what were the schools rated. So I think that many, many people are still looking at that when they determine moves, whether it be across the country or across towns. So I think that whole piece about what our schools bring to this community is something that each and every one of us own a piece of. And figuring out where those dollars come from and where they go, that's what I see where the opportunity is.
Thank you. And you had a, okay, yes, very good.
Again, I'm Ruth Rivard from 6 Berrywood Lane in Groveland. So being on the finance board, a point of information actually first, it's 65% of the town's budget that goes to education, a little bit less than 70, but it's a very large and substantial number. Given that 65% of our budget goes to the schools, I felt this year that the school committee, the goals that you said that you redid the policies, and one of the goals of the school committees, one of the goals that they stated was to get in front of all the finance boards of the towns within the course of the year. That never happened. I went a couple of times to the school committee to talk about the budget, but as a guest of the school committee, you get a 2-minute time slot that you can make public comment, and that is it. So I have 2 kids in the school. I support education. I believe the town is clearly supporting education with the funding of the new school, with the funding of the amount of the budget. But I do feel like there could be some more collaboration, that we could have more involvement in the discussions so that we can all really get behind things like budget increases, possibly overrides, what have you. So what is your feeling on that? The amount of communication there should be with the schools and the towns. Do you think it's been sufficient? Do you think it should change?
And Mr. Osher, you get this first.
I would agree. I think the communication needs to increase. I think, again, across the continuum, I think our kids need to understand what's going on in the place where they go to school. I think parents who, whether, again, they work full-time or stay at home, need to know about what's going on. And again, all through the generations of the people that live here in our towns. I think more needs to be communicated, again, about, again, black and white, about what's at stake if we do the override, what's at stake if we don't. And again, clear, factual information, I think needs to be very transparent.
Thank you. Mr. Hodges.
Well, you hit on something that's incredibly important, certainly the communication, and I don't know that anyone in any organization can necessarily give themselves an A+ for communication. That's something that I think there's always room for improvement. But I will tell you, with our new superintendent and assistant superintendent, they just fill up my email with hundreds, if not thousands, of emails involving all kinds of information. Now, that's information that's coming to me that may not be coming to everyone, but we also have websites where you can go in and see some of the same stuff that we as school committee members, but I don't think I could ever argue the point. I think we can always improve on our communication skills, always. There's always room for improvement there.
Thank you. So anyone else have a question? Okay, so I think then we'll move on to closing statements. You each have 2 minutes, and Mr. Rocher, you're first.
Okay, I just want to say thank you. It's a pleasure to be able to be introduced this way, and I appreciate it so much to be able to, state who I am and where I'm from and what I'm all about. I have lots of community involvement through my work and again through my kids currently in the district. And I think being able to move the district forward and to be able to continue the great communication that the committee has made up so far and keep that moving forward is what I'm looking to do. So thank you again.
Thank you. Mr. Hodges.
So I thought I'd share with you what I've been doing since I've been on the school committee. There was a budget evening where I ran across something. I'm one of these fussy people that looks at every single line and and I run across this thing called International Baccalaureate. Well, I had mentioned this to the previous superintendent and I literally got nowhere. But I spent over 3 hours researching it and found out it was a Marxist curriculum that was approved and promoted by the United Nations. Students were never exposed, K through 12, students were never exposed to American history or any book written by an American author. And there's over 1,300 schools that share that curriculum in the United States of America. So I suggested that night at the budget meeting that we save the $10,000 and give that money back to taxpayers, and I was outvoted 8-1. The following year, it was a 9-0 vote. I had a school committee member come up after that meeting and say, I think we'll vote to dismember the 10,000 next year, just not this year. I don't know why it ended up that way, but I've been on enough committees to know that I don't have to be right today. I can be right a year from now. So that was a good learning experience. Then I sat down with a teacher who had retired and reminded me that the last 7 years, we had breakfast together after he retired, and he reminded me that the last 7 years he had never been observed or evaluated. Well, that's horrendous. So I shared that with the new superintendent, and you'll notice that, well, maybe you won't notice, but that particular principal is now doing what that principal is supposed to have been doing all along. My wife and I are coming back from Georgetown, and we get stopped by the crossing guard at Bagnell. The first bus that comes out, we're first in line, a lot of people behind us. We stopped. First bus come out had 2 students. The second bus had 4. The third bus had 2. Out of the 7 buses that came out, there was no more than 7 students on any given bus. And the following day, I'm on my way to Perks for great coffee, by the way. They didn't pay me to say that. It's absolutely delicious. A bus comes out. We can't even close in prayer?
We didn't make the rules.
All right. So at any rate, we eliminated 3 buses, and I felt that that was my responsibility to the taxpayers, that we should not be paying for what we do not need. That's the kind of person you'll vote for if you vote for me as a school committee member. Thank you, and I thank the League of Women Voters very much for everything that you do. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you to all the candidates and to the audience for joining us this evening, and to Greater Haverhill League members Ruth Race and Valerie Osborne, and our timekeepers. Thank you to the local TV station for recording tonight's event. And remember, the annual town election is Monday, May 2nd. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and all precincts vote at Town Hall. This program will be rebroadcast on local cable channels. And don't forget about annual town meeting on May 23rd. Thank you and good evening.
I was going to stand up in front of everybody and say thank you.